Gillian Salugi. My name is Gillian Salugi, and I'm a member of the Executive Committee of SA Child. If this is your first time to know about SA Child, you are very welcome to join us. We extend a special welcome to you. So, what is SA Child? As you'll see on the screen, it's a unique platform which connects people with lived experience, professionals and families across Southern Africa to promote evidence-based practice, teaching, training, research into childhood onset disabilities. And one of our offerings is a monthly webinar on a different topic. And tonight we are going to be looking in recognition and celebrating as we mark World Down Syndrome Day with our webinar titled Beyond Childhood, Growing Older with Down Syndrome. So much of the discussion around Down syndrome focuses on early childhood and early intervention. Yet people with Down syndrome are now living longer, and this brings new and evolving health, social, and cognitive needs across adulthood and adult life. This evening, we have the privilege of hearing from two mothers of adult daughters. Susette Brynard, mother of Sheri, and Sheri and Susette used to be members of our executive committee, and Jenni Smit, mother of Aimee, and also Nick, who's on our executive committee. They will share their lived experience of navigating the journey of their children from childhood into adulthood. We are also extremely privileged and so happy to welcome Professor Eimear McGlinchey from Dublin, Trinity College in Dublin, and her work focuses on brain health and cognitive aging in people with intellectual disability, the special interest in the risk factors and early signs of dementia in people with Down syndrome. So together, these perspectives remind us that supporting people with Down syndrome is not just about childhood. It is about supporting health, participation, and well-being across the lifespan. So I'm going to start with introducing Susette. Dr. Susette Brynard is the mother of Sheri, who has Down syndrome. She was on our executive committee, and Susette was a lecturer in education management and later a research fellow at the University of the Free State, position she held for 22 years. And previously, she served as head of Department of Natural Sciences at Bloemfontein College of Education. She completed her B.Ed, her M.Ed, and her Ph.D. at the University of the Free State, and she has numerous publications which focus on the education and development of learners with Down syndrome. And her work has really highlighted the critical role of parents in the education of learners with Down syndrome. So not many people know so much history about Susette because she's such a dynamic mother of Sheri and really a globe-trotter, but she also has a family, other daughters as well. So really bringing that whole experience to us. So I'm going to hand over to Susette for 10 minutes, and she's going to introduce her daughters and tell us a little about the changes as she grew older. Over to you, Susette.
Thank you very much, Gillian, for this invitation. I'm very stressed to speak in front of Eimear because she only listens to Sheri, so I'll try my best. Now, I'll tell you about Sheri Brynard, my eldest daughter. She's 44 years old. It was her birthday on Sunday. She has Down syndrome trisomy 21, which means she has one extra chromosome in every cell in her body. When she was born, there were no assistance available in Bloemfontein. I mean, 44 years ago, things look different from today. Sheri was the only person with an intellectual disability in the school offering a mainstream curriculum in which she was admitted after many appeals. She passed the mainstream grade 10 in this school when she was 18 because she was held back before she started grade 1 and again before she started secondary school. This gave her the opportunity to be accepted at a technical college when she finished school. I just give this bit of background because the people that raises their children at this stage, you're working towards something much bigger. So we have to focus today on the rest of the life as well. And at the Mateo College, where Sheri was then also accepted, she passed the N4, that was grade 12. And then she passed the N6 theoretical exams. And after she also passed her practical exams, she was awarded an education diploma and a special award because she was the only person with an intellectual disability in South Africa who had passed a diploma at a technical tertiary college. During her studies, Sheri did practical teaching at Letty Fouchier School for learners with special education needs. She then asked the principal whether she could perhaps help them at the school when she finished her studies. The Lord blessed her with this appointment, and she has worked as assistant teacher at Letty Fouchier School for the last 18 years. And this is the highlight of her life. She's sitting there actually now, and she's preparing her lessons for tomorrow. She made wonderful friends at the college, and she's been bridesmaid at some weddings. They often make time to drink coffee together, and they share their lives with one another. She also goes to the gym every second afternoon, and she has online English classes twice a week. She has addressed more than 980 audiences in 22 countries, and she really lives a full life, and she fills my life with very little free time. Sheri has okay, now I'm going to tell you a little bit of her medical background. She had a hole in her heart when she was born, but it closed by itself. The doctor did manage that. Also, he followed that. She was diagnosed with child cancer, but she never had to stay in the hospital because at that stage, my other daughter also had asthma, and the doctor said it would be better and I would be able to look after her at home. So I don't think it was a very severe cancer. She had her tonsils removed, and although I stressed, and she endured the operation very well, and she was soon fine. Sheri once, that was one of the traumas in her life. She drank her sister's asthma medicine. She didn't like this thing of her younger sister, 1.5 years younger than her, having this medicine that she drank every night for her asthma. And the sister had to drink 3 or 4 drops. And Sheri decided to empty the whole bottle. So we didn't know that. So after a night in hospital and a brain scan, I went home to shower and I saw the empty bottle in the bin. The episode was very traumatic. When she came out of hospital, my husband asked her, Sheri, why are you crying? And her answer was, I'm crying because Mama is crying because I am crying. So everything ended without too much trauma, and we knew from then on, no medicine bottles must be on child level. All the people must remember that. Shri has been a research participant, and that Eimear knows, of the Landow's research team at the King's College for about 12 years now. She was participant 1. This research is aimed at persons with Down syndrome because they tend to get Alzheimer's when they get older. I truly believe in research, and that is why Sheri has also become part of this. They did many tests on her, like brain scans, a lumbar punch, sleep apnea, and many blood tests. She does not have sleep apnea at this stage, so they tested for that because they said her neck is not very thick. It's her neck is in the range that she shouldn't get sleep apnea. And she sleeps very well. She doesn't have any problem sleeping because, again, the King's College research did sleep tests on her. She had to wear a thing around her arm, and she doesn't have any problem with sleeping. She sleeps and she wakes up with her own clock that wakes her. The alarm. To get ready for work, she gets up. She also reminds me of everything I have to do for her, like printing her lessons that she worked out the previous night, answering emails about her activities, and then I drop her off at work. And then her smile goes so big because she sees the children and they run out and they meet her at the car. Sheri has a boyfriend, but they do not plan to get married. He lives far away, so they are very busy, both of them, but they enjoy each other's company. They also enjoy the lives they are living now. Gustav lives on a farm in Hartbeesfontein. We live in Bloemfontein, and they contact each other the whole time, and we send gifts to each other, and we visit each other a few times a year. Now, how have I supported her to become as independent as possible? I think because Sheri was born just before her sister was a year and a half younger than Sheri. I actually raised two twins because the two was very similar in intellectual age. So I didn't purposefully teach her to become independent. She had two sisters who became more and more independent, which showed her the next steps of her development. And that's one of the most important things I always tell the parents, because so many parents will tell me, "Oh, I've got this wonderful child. I'll spend my whole life raising this child and give all my energy to this child." But my energy wasn't enough to raise Sheri. The energy of her sisters was much more important than mine. I worked full time, and my children had to be independent and be able to do things for themselves. Cherie was raised in a busy, happy home. We all helped each other, and Cherie was very left brain about things. She still is. It's not me who tell her what we do tomorrow, but she tells me what I have to do for her. And the printing of her classes is very sweet because she goes on ChatGPT. She asks ChatGPT for Afrikaans classes about the weather for children who are less abled, Afrikaans children. And then she starts from there and she works out these lessons. So that's very nice. And she'll remind me 100 times about somebody's birthday, a nail or a hair appointment. So she has her own inbuilt program in her head. Perhaps I think what we as parents should also know is that our children will learn more from our example than from what we teach them. They will not learn from what you say. They will learn from what you do. And that is one of the most important things. The sisters got married, she was bridesmaid, and they still have a very close relationship. She lives with me and her stepfather in her own room with her own bathroom and television. She's busy during the day, and in the evenings she does her own planning and watch a little bit of television, do English homework. She really stays busy because she likes it. She thinks that's normal because it's normal in this house to work. She has decided that she would like to stay in her granny's smaller apartment with assistance if I pass away before her. Her father has already passed away. And she will visit her sisters during the holidays. She has worked this out. So she already has somebody that she nominated to me that should be her assistants and to take her to school and things like that. So she's not too afraid that I might pass away. She might even look forward to that because she's going to be more on her own. I've prepared Sheri for visits to her sisters because the one sister is in Johannesburg. She has to fly there. She often flies in South Africa on her own. And when we go overseas, my other sister is in London. I also now let her walk in front of me and tell me what we have to do when we fly. So she knows all the ropes, and she tells me we have to do this or that. And when we enter Heathrow, she will look up and say, "Okay, we board at this and that time. Mama, you've got about 30 minutes to shop. Be quick." So that is how we do that. And then advice is for people is very difficult, as Gillian said, because we're not the same. The children is not the same. We are all different. I do see parents feeling sorry for their child, depriving the child of discipline and structure, or getting someone else to take over the role as primary caregiver. And that to me is very much a problem. The parent is the primary caregiver, and the parent must really be boots and all in this raising of the child. When Sheri was born, I was 25 years old and was teaching. So I decided to keep on teaching after my children was born, and it was not the way that was happening at that stage. As I moved on, Sheri learned to play the piano because her sister took piano. She took drama classes because her sisters did drama classes. And she competed in art festivals. And that is one of the reasons why Sheri can also speak well, is because her sisters took drama classes and she did the same. And then the other thing is her sisters also did public speaking. She didn't do public speaking. She sat through so many public speaking festivals, and she listened to all these people speak. speaking. And that is, she picked it up. So that nothing was done purposefully when I raised Sheri. I just raised her as a sister for the other sisters. Um, I would, as what did I say? I always thought I will do what I will do, uh, what if I have to choose something to do for Sheri? If she does something wrong, if she's not behaving right, in my head, I will look at her and think, okay, if she was a person with 46 chromosomes, what would I have done? And that's the only way I could raise her, because I wanted her to blend into the society. And that made it easier for her to go into an inclusive school environment, because she was raised from day one to I will say the word, to do what normal children do. So because I was a teacher, I was always working with children, and I tried to also for my own children to use the same discipline over the show. Each one has had to listen to certain discipline rules and certain rules, society rules in the house. So I tried to raise a child who would fit into the typical society. By this, I never thought she would blend in 100%, but she had to follow the same rules. And I still work on this. So the sad thing was that many people focused on what my daughter would not be able to do when she was born. Just get that out of your head. So listen to people that's positive if you're a parent. But these days, she spends her life showing the world what she can do. Everything she did was a bonus to me. Her stimulation was up to me because there were no therapists available when she was born. I made our stimulation sessions enjoyable. I also like things that I enjoy. So we both enjoyed it, and then the sister would enjoy it, and the other one coming 6 years later also enjoyed it. And then I didn't know how to raise her anyway. So I met with a lady, her children were in the school where I taught, and she had the most wonderful children. They were so bright. And I asked her, okay, I asked her, what did you do to raise your children to be so exceptional? They were all typical children. And she told me the next. And this is perhaps the thing that I can stop with, Gillian, because this is the way I then raised Sheri. The same way that this Dr. von Delft, Professor von Delft's wife, Mrs. von Delft, raised her children. She told me, play music to your children, classical music, folk music. Music talks to our children. Spend constructive time with your children. Talk to your child. In her eyes, look in the eyes, put your mouth on your child's mouth, talk with her, to her. And teach them as much as you can, as soon as you can. I still have a page, Juliet. I will stop.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that insight. And I think Sheri's now, is she 44 years old?
44.
So
That's right.
a lifetime of experiences that we've made you distill into 10 minutes. So thank you so much for that. Just welcome to people that have joined us. Particularly, I'd like to say welcome to friends from the Down Syndrome Association and parents. So glad that we are in this together. Susette, thank you. And please, if you have questions for Susette, please do use the chat function, and she'll be very happy to answer any questions. I'm now delighted to introduce you to Jenni Smit. Jenni Smit began her career as a nursery school teacher, motivated by a deep commitment to educating and mentoring children. Following a tragic car accident that profoundly changed her life, she devoted herself to supporting her young son, Nick, who was left with hemiplegia, helping him grow into an independent adult. Many of you have met Nick. He's a member of our executive committee. He's a maths teacher and a disability advocate. So Jenni was surely successful in raising an independent young man. 6 years later, Jenni and her partner welcomed their beautiful daughter, Aimee, which reminds me to share the screen. Just wait. We are getting there. Just wait. I want to show you all Aimee. I think, yeah. Can you all see? Jenni, is that Aimee's mood board?
Yes, that's the right one. Can you hear me now? Yes,
Yes.
So I thought that, Aimee is right here in any case. So let me let her stand up. She's had a swim, so her hair's all wet and she's not looking, she's in her pajamas, but she's there to say hello.
Hello, Aimee.
And she must go have your supper, babe. So this is her mood board, yes, and I think it shows you what she does, and also she is such a happy child and she's such a joy to us. So I felt we had to make this to show you a bit about her. Yeah.
It's the first time I'd heard of a mood board, so thank you for teaching me.
Yeah.
Your experience
Thank
in
you.
raising two children with disability, I think Jenni brings profound insight into the resilience, advocacy, and the commitment involved in supporting children with additional needs. So, Jenni, I'm really looking forward to hearing you, and thank you so much for giving us your time and for sharing your story. Over to you.
Sure that.
Yep.
So I think I have a lot that's similar as well with Sheri's story, but I would like to share with you my journey with Aimee, my daughter. Aimee is 37 years old now, and as you know, she's Down syndrome. When you see one Down syndrome person, you don't see all of them. Individuals with Down syndrome possess wide range of abilities. As was mentioned, there's 3 types of Down syndrome: translocation mosaic and trisomy 21. Aimee is or has trisomy 21. But that doesn't define Aimee. Aimee is gentle, she is kind, she is conscientious, she's organized, and she's always forgiving of other people and most helpful. She doesn't assert her own opinion. She is slow to understanding and in action, but she certainly always tries her best. She gets upset when she can't complete a task to the best of her ability. Aimee loves music and dancing. As the other mother mentioned, music makes their hearts swing. Another activity that she is involved with is swimming and 10-pin bowling. She enjoys Zoom bingo, which she does through the Downs Association. She plays tennis every afternoon against the wall of our house, and every now and again she'll also play some basketball. Jigsaw puzzles are a firm favorite. She helps me make dinner. She is my sous chef. During the day, she attends a daycare center. It's just for the morning, and there she takes part in archery and swimming, and then she returns home and she has a short nap. Aimee is a very friendly child, but she has found it difficult to make deep friendships. Many of the friendships that she did make when she was at school have now ended up in permanent residential care situations, and so their relationship has tailed off. But she enjoys socializing, and a friend of mine has moved to the UK. She has a son that's Down syndrome, and Aimee voice messages him quite frequently. I've been asked to speak about Aimee's health issues. I know that many Down syndrome people will share these challenges as well. As a result of a compromised immune system, Aimee had numerous chronic upper respiratory infections. So she had quite a few operations as well in that regard. When she was a teenager, she had an operation to reposition her jaw. And this wasn't for aesthetic reasons. In Down syndrome persons, the oral cavity is decreased in size due to the underdevelopment of their midface. This affects speech and chewing, and clenching and grinding the teeth are very common with Down syndrome. Aimee had very little teeth left, and she was experiencing jaw pain, so she underwent the operation. She had to go for orthodontic treatment prior to the operation, and after the operation, all her teeth were capped. Aimee has hypothyroidism. She's on medication to control this and periodically has to have blood tests to check her levels of thyroid hormone. Down syndrome people have a higher risk of developing obesity as compared to the general population. Aimee has just started a wellness program through our medical aid. Aimee has poor eyesight and has prescribed glasses. She also has a depth perception problem. She has dry skin, so she is on medication for that, and she visits a dietitian every 6 weeks because her toenails curl and lift off the bed. How do you teach your loved one independent living? I don't know if Gillian's trying to tell me something. Is there
No,
something,
no.
Gillian? No? Okay, good.
Carry on.
Good. No, I thought you said you'd appear if there was something in
I'm
this.
so busy.
Okay, good. No, that's fine. So often we think of independence as something big, like moving out of the home or holding down a job. But true independence is built on small moments, one small step at a time. Independence does not mean zero support. We all need support. As humans, we rely on each other and we support each other. When I think of the journey that I've been on, without the help from doctors, physios, occupational speech therapists, I don't think I could have survived. The first type of independence that we're going to be looking at is self-care. That is bathing and grooming. Aimee wouldn't wash her hair, so I broke it down into simple steps. I had to slow down and say, how are you doing with that? What do you need? Ask me for help if you need to. Even if they do one step of a 10-step task, it builds their dignity and their confidence. The first time that they do this on their own, it's huge, and it shows that there's internal motivation. The second set of skills that we're going to be looking at is keeping their space clean, money management, and how to use transportation. A lot of dancers will need support with these skills. I found that my role needed to shift from a caregiving mode to doing everything for Aimee to a coaching mode. I needed to do things with Aimee and give her the opportunity to learn. And this is challenging. We live in such a rushed life that it's often easier and faster to do things in the moment. It is rewarding to see her achieve things. I had to resist jumping in too quickly and saving Aimee. She has gained skills and confidence, and the whole family breathes much easier. Another life skill is staying safe. If your loved one cannot recognize dangers and set boundaries and ask for help, they are vulnerable. Teaching safety skills is not optional. It might be the most important thing that you do for your child. As parents, we're very protective over our loved ones, and that makes sense. There's a good reason for that. Research has shown that disabled people are more likely to be abused than non-disabled people. And this helps us understand why the subject is important. If your loved one doesn't know how to say no when someone is crossing the boundary, if they do not know how to tell you when something has gone wrong, that's dangerous. And supervision isn't always safety plan. Abuse is usually done by someone that they know. Staff come and go in residential homes, and often there's very little supervision, and your child is left at the mercy of other disabled people, and there could be bullying involved as well. Let's help our loved ones build some skills. What do we do when we see something wrong? When we recognize potential danger? They have to communicate. They have to ask for help. Verbal or texting someone is a skill that they should learn. Knowing how to help is vital. Aimee is a very quiet child, and she has been in situations and she has not opened her mouth and said, no, I will not put up with this. And this is something I've been trying. We need to teach our loved ones about personal boundaries, consent, recognize that it is right to say no to unwanted touch. This empowers them to feel safe and respected and reduces their vulnerability. Aimee experienced a situation in a plant nursery. I arrived to fetch her and I saw this happening and I was able to stop the situation. If someone asks for gifts or money, especially if it's in exchange for favors, then that's also a warning sign. A few years ago, Aimee was at Cresta Shopping Centre and she was approached by a salesperson who tried to persuade her to buy a product because she said it would be wonderful for me, the mother, and Aimee handed over all her money. So, and you have to prepare your children for all these situations that might arise. They've got to practice. How do they ask for help? They've got to be drills, role playing to give them confidence and keep them safe. Day-to-day situations about teaching the Down syndrome, you need to teach them how to use a knife or how to handle a stove. I mean, we've got a gas stove, so we have to watch with that, but she's very good with that. She knows how to turn it off and she will call me if there's any issue. If there was ever a stranger in the door, how should they respond? In closing, I would like to mention a question that all the parents with disabled persons have said. What will happen to my loved one when I'm gone? Where do they see their loved ones in the future when they're not able to care for them anymore? I think securing their financial future with a special needs trust might be an option. They've got to ensure that their assets, property, money, life insurance policies are all held in one account and used to support your loved one. I think we've also got to think about the options. I mean, Sheri is going to stay in a flat on her own with possible support. A lot of them will not be able to do that. So we've got to, whatever suits your family and what your loved one's needs are, you have to be considered. There are small group homes now, residential homes, and you could also live with a family member. But your loved one has to be valued wherever they are. We also, very importantly, need a network of people to call, the support system that comes with the relationship that grows with shared experience. It's not transactional. We're not going to pay them for this. I am forming a support system for Aimee when I'm no longer around. I don't want her to be a burden just for one person. All parents of disabled persons wear many hats. They are doctors, teachers, chauffeurs, and so much more. I have watched them care for their loved ones. I have watched them cry for their loved ones. I have watched them love their disabled child. And I celebrate you. Thank you.
Jenni, thank you. That was beautiful. It was profound. Thank you. Thank you so much for the work that you've put into that. And I think from you and Susette, I don't think we really have a clue if we ourselves are not the parents of a child with Downs, exactly what that means. And you've got a lifetime of sharing. And I especially appreciate the very practical ideas that you both have given us. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. So if you have any questions for Jenni or for Susette, please put them in the chat line. And we're now going to move over and move on to Professor Eimear McGlinchey, who I'm delighted to welcome. And she's joining us from Dublin in Ireland. So Dr. McGlinchey is Assistant Professor in Intellectual Disability in the School of Nursing and Midwifery, and she's a Senior Atlantic Fellow for Equity in Brain Health at the Global Brain Health Institute. With a background in psychology, her research focuses on the promotion of brain health in people with intellectual disability, particularly dementia in people with Down syndrome. Her work is based at the Trinity Center for Aging and Intellectual Disability, where she is the research lead with the National Intellectual Disability Memory Service. Dr. McGlinchey teaches on undergraduate and postgraduate programs, supervises graduate students, and directs several MSc programs in aging, dementia, and community health. She has published widely and presents regularly at national and international conferences. And cognitive health and aging is something that we don't often touch upon, we don't often think about. And, you know, we think about a lot what happens when the children are children, but it's a childhood onset disability. So I think it's really important that we ourselves feel informed and feel prepared, best prepared for how we can help our family members or help those that we serve. So a really, really warm welcome to Eimear. Thank you so much for joining us, and over to you. I just want before Eimear starts, I just want to say to people that our webinar should finish at 8, but we probably will be able to stay open a bit longer. So if you'd like to stay with us, we're not going to close it at 8. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll discuss them at the end of your talk. But thanks so much, Eimear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gillian. Thank you for the invitation. And Sheri, hi, it's lovely to see you. I see you just joined. So as Gillian said, my name is Aimee McGlinchey. I'm assistant professor in intellectual disability, and my work mainly focuses on dementia in people with Down syndrome. I'm based in Trinity College in Dublin, but I've had the pleasure of working a little bit in South Africa. This was from an MBISO that we held about 2 years ago now in Johannesburg, where I first met Susette and Sheri, and continuing to do some work with colleagues based in South Africa around Down syndrome and aging in people with Down syndrome. So today I want to talk about Down syndrome and dementia. I know this can be a difficult topic to listen to, but I think it's important to try to give the information as clearly as possible, and then hopefully we'll have time for any questions at the end, or please feel free to jump in during it if you want. So I'll first just talk about the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and also around brain health, then the link between Down syndrome and Alzheimer's disease. I'll talk a little bit about the challenges around assessment and some of the early symptoms and presentation of dementia in people with Down syndrome. And then we'll talk a little bit about strategies to support brain health. So what are some of the things that actually we could all do to support our brain health throughout our lives? So when we're talking about brain health is really a term that describes how well the brain is working day to day. So it's talking about the brain throughout the lifespan, where a healthy brain will support memory, learning, moods, our decision-making, our everyday activities. And so it's the idea of maintaining a healthy brain throughout our lives. Alzheimer's disease then is a disease that's defined biologically. So it's where there's the presence of something called amyloid and tau in the brain, and it causes dementia. So dementia is a syndrome caused by Alzheimer's disease, and that's the clinical presentation that we may know that have symptoms like loss of memory, changes in daily functioning. And so when we're talking about Alzheimer's disease, we're talking specifically about the disease in the brain, and then dementia is the presentation of the symptoms. And so there is a relationship between Down syndrome and Alzheimer's disease, and this is because of the 3 copies of chromosome 21 that people with Down syndrome have. So on chromosome 21, there is this gene called the amyloid precursor protein gene. And because people with Down syndrome have 3 copies of chromosome 21, it means that they're then producing more of this amyloid precursor protein, or this APP gene, throughout their lives. So because there is this overproduction and this overexpression of APP, it can lead to amyloid plaques. So amyloid plaques are one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. And so because there is this overexpression, as that folds and folds on itself, it creates these amyloid plaques and then tau tangles, and that leads to Alzheimer's disease. So it means that people with Down syndrome have a very high risk of Alzheimer's disease, where by the age of 40, nearly everyone with Down syndrome will have that neuropathology of Alzheimer's disease. So that means the changes in the brain and in the blood of Alzheimer's disease. But as I said, clinical dementia then is slightly different. That's where there is the presentation of symptoms. And there is a high risk for people with Down syndrome to present with dementia. That's the clinical presentation of dementia. And going back to what was already said earlier, this is really the first time where this has become, it's really in the last decade or so, or 2 decades, that this has really come to the fore. And because people with Down syndrome are living longer, so people are living into their 60s and 70s and beyond. And so it's because of this that dementia has become more prominent and is more of a health concern in adults with Down syndrome. So for people with Down syndrome, the average age of diagnosis of clinical dementia is about 53.8 years. just to mention the kind of broader research around Alzheimer's disease, and this is really a very hopeful time in terms of Alzheimer's disease, where there are new drugs. They're called anti-amyloid disease modifying drugs. So I had mentioned before that the main cause of Alzheimer's disease is amyloid and tau in the brain. And these new drugs have shown that it's possible to remove amyloid from the brain. This could be so beneficial for people with Down syndrome, where there is these high levels of amyloid. And for the first time, just starting this year, people with Down syndrome will be included in clinical trials of these anti-amyloid drugs. And this is a huge development, because we've known for a long time, since the 80s, we actually learned about amyloid and how amyloid causes Alzheimer's disease in the 80s from people with Down syndrome. But since then, because really of stigma, of discrimination, people with Down syndrome were excluded from a lot of research and a lot of studies in Alzheimer's disease, despite this really high risk. And so this new development, where people are being included in, there will be 3 different clinical trials starting that will include people with Down syndrome with some of these new drugs. And this is hugely important, because when these drugs come on the market, it'll be important to show that these are that they can be prescribed to people with Down syndrome. There are additional risks, and so it's really important that within these clinical trials, there's looking at safety for people with Down syndrome, and when's the right time to start, and all of those questions that will be so important for safety. But it is a very hopeful time with some of these new drugs. So in thinking about how do we assess for dementia in people with Down syndrome, and this can be challenging. So as you know, because people with Down syndrome have a lifelong pre-existing intellectual disability, it can sometimes be difficult to disentangle change that we see because of dementia from that lifelong pre-existing intellectual disability. And one of the main challenges here is that tests that are used in the general population generally are not suitable for people with Down syndrome. So there are a lot of tests, standardized tests, that will be used to try to diagnose dementia in the general population. But this won't be helpful for people with Down syndrome. But there are now a lot of validated and standardized tests for people with Down syndrome that we can use, but it does require specialist training. If someone were to go to a GP who doesn't work in diagnosing with people with Down syndrome, they may not be familiar with these tests. So it does involve specialty within the area. Another challenge in diagnosing dementia can be if someone with Down syndrome is living within a service and there's high staff turnover. It can mean that sometimes staff may not be aware of how that person was functioning to the best of their ability. So for example, if there's a new staff member who has met someone with Down syndrome who is maybe in their 50s, they may not know that 10 years ago that person was operating at a different level. And so some of those changes may be lost when there is high staff turnover who don't know the person really well. And so having a really good history of knowing how the person was functioning at their best level of functioning is really important. It's also really important that we have a baseline measure using some of these cognitive tests around the age of 30 or 35 for people with Down syndrome. So in the general population, when we look at these standardized tests for dementia, there's often norms in the population that we can say if someone has a particular score that's higher or lower than norms in the general population. But that doesn't work for a population with Down syndrome because there's a lot of variability in level of intellectual disability. So what's recommended is that everyone, without there being any concern about decline, around the age of 30 or 35, has this baseline assessment. So if at a later time there is concern around decline, you can repeat the same tests and measure it against their own score or their own best level of functioning. There's also, as you know, a high level of physical and mental health comorbidities in people with Down syndrome, and some of these can mask some of the symptoms of dementia, or some of them can mimic some of the symptoms of dementia. So, for example, thyroid issues can be prevalent in people with Down syndrome, and that can sometimes cause or lead to some symptoms that may be confused with dementia. Then finally, the limited expertise among health professionals. As I said, for many of these tests, they will require specialist training, and so that can be also a challenge. when we do a full assessment and diagnostic workup for people with Down syndrome, really we follow the same procedure as we do with people in the general population. So it's really important to do this full diagnostic workup that first of all looks at all the physical health aspects. So looking at vital signs, urinalysis, doing a full physical health examination, vision and hearing test, and doing blood tests. Again, to rule out or to look at things like thyroid issues, TFT or different kind of blood counts to make sure that there isn't something else happening that may be causing symptoms similar to dementia. We also here offer everyone to have a neuroimaging scan if they're able to tolerate it so that we can see the brain changes that may be happening in the brain. And then really important are the neuropsychological testing and the full history of the person. That also includes asking someone who knows them well about any changes they may have seen. So I mentioned a minute ago that there are challenges because there can be difficulties in using standardized tests. And so the two tests you see here have been validated for people with Down syndrome. This consists both of objective measures. So this is where we do an assessment with the person with Down syndrome, but also importantly, we do what's called a proxy measure or an informant measure, where we'll ask a family member or a staff member that knows them well about any changes they may have noticed across, whether it is physical health, day-to-day living, mood, anything like that, to really try and understand what changes may be happening within the person. And there are a number of standardized tests that are can be used for those. So looking now a little bit at brain health. So brain health is something that over the last number of years has become a huge topic within the area of dementia. This was a paper that came out in 2024 that made a very big claim that if we changed lifestyle factors, we could reduce the risk of dementia by 45%. So you can see in this graph, it goes through I know the writing is a little bit small, it's on the left here, that if we addressed all of these things, so for example, if there was more education, if in midlife we addressed hearing loss and high cholesterol and depression, if we did more physical activity, all of these things that are listed on the left, that we could reduce the risk of dementia by 45%. And this is a theoretical model, but we don't know how relevant this is for people with Down syndrome. And I want to say that really clearly as I move on to the next slides of things we may be able to do. And that's simply just there isn't research done at a large level with people with Down syndrome to understand how adjusting and really working on all of these things may reduce the risk or not. And I'll mention this again in a minute. So if we take all of these issues, so education, hearing loss, high cholesterol, depression, physical activity, diabetes, smoking, hypertension, alcohol use, social isolation, vision loss. If we think first, how do these issues compare with people with Down syndrome as we see for the general population? And we can see they're actually quite different. So as people are getting older with Down syndrome, there's a study in Ireland, we have a national study where we can compare aging in people with intellectual disability to the general population. And for people with Down syndrome specifically, we see there are some things where there's higher rates and some things where there's lower rates. So we found that people with Down syndrome have less education, and I know that's something that we talk about a lot, and that I think this is improving, but certainly it's still a very big issue where access to education is lower. There's higher rates of obesity in people with Down syndrome compared to the general population, higher rates of depression, and higher rates of physical inactivity. So people with Down syndrome are less active than the general population. And so they are things that can be risk factors for dementia. It seems that people with Down syndrome have similar rates of hearing loss to the general population. I think we're probably not great at measuring hearing loss, either in people with Down syndrome or in the general population, but it appears that they are quite similar. But there are other areas where it seems that people with Down syndrome are more protected. So hypertension, which is high blood pressure. People with Down syndrome, we really don't see hypertension in people with Down syndrome. And so that's something that's protective. We see lower levels of diabetes in people with Down syndrome. There's lower levels of alcohol and smoking. And interesting, there are lower levels of social isolation. And social isolation is something that's measured objectively. So it counts, how are you around people? How many people are you around, or do you live with other people? And so it doesn't really capture the subjective feeling of loneliness. So while people may feel lonely, often in Ireland, in any case, in this study, we found that people weren't socially isolated, and that may be a protective factor. When we're thinking about brain health and some of these lifestyle factors for people with Down syndrome, I think there are three things that are important to consider. So the first is genetics. So I mentioned at the start that everyone would be, because there is 3 copies of this chromosome that produces this amyloid precursor protein gene, there is a genetic risk for Alzheimer's disease. And so without research, we don't know how much these lifestyle factors will have an impact because of that very strong genetic component. Despite that, though, within people with Down syndrome, we do see that there is variation in terms of when people develop clinical symptoms of dementia. So while everyone with trisomy 21 will have the same genetic risk, some people may develop symptoms earlier, some people may not develop symptoms until much, much later. And so it seems that there is something else that's happening that is suggestive that some of these lifestyle factors may be able to delay some of those symptoms of dementia. So I mentioned that there isn't much research, and I think that's still very true. This is a review we did a while ago looking at research that has done interventions, say using exercise or interventions looking at cognitive stimulation. And there isn't a huge amount, and a lot of these studies were with quite small numbers of people. You can see from the picture on the left, so the green arrows means that there was a positive effect, the red arrows means there was no effect. And so if a number of different studies that did exercise interventions, really what this is showing is that some found that it had an effect, some found that it didn't have an effect. And so really the message here is I think we need more research to understand this, and probably with bigger samples and maybe some projects that look at multiple things together. So rather than just focusing on exercise and cognitive stimulation and diet, and seeing how addressing all of these things together might be helpful. I don't want the message to be confusing here. I suppose what I wanted to really highlight that the research specifically in people with Down syndrome is really lacking at the minute in terms of how, if we make these lifestyle changes, will it help to prevent or delay dementia? And I think at the minute we have to say the answer is we don't know, but there's very little risk in addressing some of these modifiable lifestyle factors, and the side effects are all going to be good. So the main steps, and this is from the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland, are to be physically active, to eat a healthy diet, to take care of your heart, to mentally challenge your brain, and to be socially engaged. And this is advice that's given. This is, again, advice for everyone to help to maintain brain health. So a little bit more specific things that we can think about is metabolic health. So the high blood pressure, abnormal cholesterol levels, excess fat around the waist, high blood sugar levels. So if you have 3 out of these, it would be classed as metabolic syndrome. So things that we can do to support this, or to support and promote metabolic health, is regular physical activity, encouraging a balanced diet, managing waist circumference over time, and attending regular health checks, and including monitoring blood pressure, cholesterol, glucose, and that kind of thing. And again, this is advice that is good for all of us. Looking at sensory support, so we know vision and hearing are important contributors to brain health. There can be higher levels of vision loss in people with Down syndrome as they age, and this can sometimes be missed. So the general advice is to get screened or to get assessed every 2 years for vision and hearing. We know that some people may find it harder to tolerate these, and so to look at ways of supporting people to attend and to be able to do these screenings, and then support with wearing hearing aids. So I know certainly here some people will have hearing aids, but it can be challenging to actually wear them, and so looking at what supports we can have to help with that. Psychosocial health is then really important. So getting treatment for depression, really supporting social inclusion and community integration, and looking at stimulating enjoyable activities in the person's life. Again, this has been found to be really important to help with brain health. And finally, just before we finish, I just want to talk a small bit about research on Down syndrome, specifically across Southern Africa. So there is a number that we always say that there are 6 million people in the world with Down syndrome. But between US and Europe, where a lot of the research has taken place, it looks like there's about 800,000 to 1 million people with Down syndrome, which means that then outside of the US and Europe, maybe about 5 million people with Down syndrome, where we know very little, there's very little research published. And so that's something that is really important to understand life expectancy, understand the lived experience, to understand access to services and the health conditions that affect people with Down syndrome across Southern Africa. There is some research happening at the minute in South Africa, and we hope that this will help to inform policy and interventions and to help inform support strategies to shape future research and advocacy work, and also to inform culturally sensitive healthcare for the Down syndrome community in Southern Africa. So thank you again very much for listening. If anyone has any questions afterwards or would like to get in touch, please do. I'm always happy to chat. There's my email address. So thank you so much.
Aimee, thank you so much for a wealth of information packed into a short space of time. Personally, my eyes have been opened. I'm a bit embarrassed that there's so much out there that we just haven't been kept up to date with, particularly with regards to aging, and how much research and how seriously how much attention is being paid to the issue around aging and brain health and cognitive health. I'm wondering if there are any questions from anyone. You can put your hands up, use the chat line. I think we have some parents with us and people from Down syndrome. If there was anything you'd like to comment and bring us up to speed with what's happening in South Africa, please do feel free. Okay. Sean van Wyk, you've made a long comment here. I wonder if you would like to just speak to that. Sean, do you have your, you can unmute yourself.
Sorry, I've got it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I sorry, it is a long-winded one there. But what I was trying to say is I'm currently also busy with my studies in dementia and specifically in intellectual disability and dementia. And we are trying at our facility to start with baseline assessments to establish changes. And I've been using the NTG EDSD, which is quite easy for our care providers to use. I know it's not an official baseline, but I just wanted to find out if that's a good way to start, specifically also in terms of researching, because we are at a loss for research in South Africa.
Yeah. So I think the NTG is quite a good screening tool. There's another one called I'll just put it in the chat, the DISQUID, which I think stands for the Down Syndrome Questionnaire. I can't remember what the rest of it.
Now I've seen that one as well. Yes.
Yeah, it's actually very similar to the NTG, and that's something
Yes.
that we use here. And I think, as you said, so I think that's a very good screening tool to first see, has there been changes, and then after that would, if possible, ideally with a baseline cognitive assessment with something like the CAMCOG, which, as I said, I know that has more challenges in terms of there's some training and it can take more time, but ideally that would then serve as a baseline, whereas the NTG or the DISQUID is seeing, has there already been some change?
Yeah.
But I think it's certainly a very useful screening tool, and I know, Sean, I hope we're going to meet separately again very soon.
Yes, I've sent you a few dates. Yes, no, that would be awesome.
Brilliant.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Sean.
And then Valerie's asking, are there drug trials in South Africa?
So Valerie, no, as far as I know, there aren't. I will say that these trials have not yet started. I know they're starting Maybe they've started now in the US. I know it's starting in Ireland over the next year or so. But as far as I know, this isn't yet starting in South Africa. I think as I said, there's a gap, I think, in research, and as Sean mentioned, in aging or older people with Down syndrome related to dementia in South Africa at the minute, although I know it sounds like Sean is starting and doing work in this area. But as far as I know, it's not yet happening in South Africa.
Oh, okay. And then a question from Carolyn Narima, who says, does the risk of sensory impairment in Down syndrome increase right from childhood, or is there an age threshold after which we should start to screen every 2 years?
So yes, I should have said, I think that every 2 years is from adulthood. So after the age of maybe 35 to 40 for screening every 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
I will, let me see if I can add it. I may not be able to add it here, Gillian. I'll send it afterwards. There's a very good paper on medical guidelines for people with Down syndrome that have a lot of these recommendations that are at different ages across the lifespan. So I'll send that on, Gillian, and maybe you could share it with the group.
Absolutely. Okay. And then Susette, I know that Sheri's been involved in quite a number of research projects. I presume they are all outside of this country. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about what's been involved in that?
I'm listening to Eimear now because I think it's the information, the way she condensed it was just wonderful. Thank you very much for that, because it's a huge amount that she said in a little time. But I also thought about Sheri. She's still part of the Landowns research. She's going there now when we go to London again. But they've got so much information of her brain because she's done brain scans nearly every year. They did brain scans at the stage, and they did a lumbar punch, and they still do the blood test. And I wondered, why can't we all work together? Do you work with Landowns or do you work separately?
Yeah, no, we work very closely. So in Europe, there's something called the Horizon 21 European Down Syndrome Consortium. And so that is a consortium across now 12 different research groups that all work together. So and so Andre and the Landowns group is part of that consortium. So exactly as you said, Susette, I think that's where it's really moving, because it needs to move. So none of this work can happen in just one place, in one country, in one silo. So across Europe, and then also with the US, there is a very large effort to make sure that any of this research is kind of all combined, and that all the efforts are going together. So yeah, working closely with Andre.
Okay, but we can also work closely with you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're almost out of time, but I have one last question for both Jenni and for Eimear. I was really interested in that one of the protective factors was the social point of view, social supports. And I'm interested in, Eimear, if you can unpack that a little bit for us, because I know in conversations I've had with Jenni that, and also with not just with Jenni, but with kids that are now older, that have disabilities, is that social isolation becomes very real, particularly once you've left school. So I just wonder if Jenni would like to speak to that a bit, and if Eimear can also add to what you mean by, social contacts. Jenni, do you want to unmute yourself? Yeah.
Okay, so unmuted. Yes, that's why I've actually been taking Aimee to a daycare center in the morning, because although I've done nursery school teaching and I could work with her, and I do things like I do knitting with her, and we've made things and we cook and we do, lots of activities, it's not the same as actually socializing. And she really enjoys her time there where she does socialize with other people that are in the same sort of situation as her. And she does come with me everywhere because I do not have a domestic worker or whatever. So wherever I go, Aimee goes with me and she enjoys the company of other people and all that. So I wouldn't say that she's totally isolated in any way. She's going to swimming at a gym. We don't belong to the gym, but through Nick, we managed to get into the gym. And there she swims as well and meeting, people that aren't disabled. I think that it is absolutely essential, and I think she's happiest when she does. When she isn't able to go into the school, not to the school, but to the care center, she seems to get quite upset. She enjoys being there. So I think that's quite a good thing. Yeah, I think there's so many things. Like I was listening to Elmer. I don't know if I said that correctly. And I think it's so important to encourage their brain development, to encourage them. And I have something that I have to say. It's not really with the Downs, but I worked for a year at this care center that Aimee is. And there was a boy that was really disabled, and we were discussing feelings, and it was sort of over the Valentine's period. And I said, I want you to draw a picture of what makes you happy. And this boy he could not speak, but he drew a picture of a band. You could see it so clearly. You could see the audience, you could see the drummers, you could see the people playing the guitars. And he said to me, just pointing to himself, that's him. And he had a T-shirt on with Sting. And he said to me, there. And he's showing me the Sting. So I think we really underestimate their abilities. And I feel even when I worked for that year, I tried every day to stimulate them, not only physically, because we'd have physical where we do gross motor, but also mentally. And I think in so many of these centers, they do nothing all day. I've seen those that the people are depressed, they're just crying. I think they need as much stimulation as possible. I don't know whether you agree with me, Elmer.
I do, absolutely, Jenny. I completely agree with everything you said. And I think that is what, when we talk about kind of social engagement, it's getting at exactly what you're talking about, that like social interactions are really complex, and it involves a lot of being able to follow conversations or interpret social cues. There's a lot of very complex kind of cognitive processing in all of those social engagements. And I think the more that all of us, and the more that throughout our lives we remain socially engaged, it helps to build those neural pathways and allow for kind of that flexible neural networks. So I think it is really important. And as you said, Jenny, I think ensuring that people are doing new things that are challenging and engaging and learning new things, I think is so important.
Yeah, me absolutely agree there totally. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I think that's a good note to bring this all together. Really, it highlights for me the human contact. And it's not just about a childhood onset disability that has a pile of symptoms that we have to try and manage. It's more about creating opportunities and recognizing the value and the importance of social interaction, engagement, and participation. And what is our role if we're a family member, or if we're in an educator or a health professional? What is it that we can do in our sphere to contribute to enhancing opportunities for social interaction engagement, particularly as the kids that we work with become older? So I really want to say a big thank you to Eimear, to Jenni, and to Susette. I think this has been hugely enriching and informative. And I think it really brings together, yes, the clinical and the research aspect together with the lived experience. And I think as we move forward, it's holding all of those together. A last word from me, just around, if I can find the slide again, from SA Child, just to let you know what's coming next. Next month, we are going to be focusing on autism. That will be the theme for the month. And the talk will be about when love meets exhaustion, understanding caregiver burnout in parents of children with autism. So please do join us. And if you're not already a member of SA Child, please, there's the QR code. If you scan that, you'll go straight to our membership page. We'd love to have you as members. what members get is CPD points for the attending, but I must apologize that we've had a small glitch this time around, and for this particular webinar, unfortunately, there aren't CPD points, but we're going to rectify that going forward. And we'd love you to be part of our community. We want to stretch across disciplines and across Southern Africa. I'm so pleased that people from outside South Africa are here with us this evening. And it's about working together across disciplines and professionals working together with families and with researchers. So only through that we are really going to make a difference that's meaningful. So from our side, a huge thank you again to Eimear, to Jenni, and to Susette, and a very good night to all of you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. I so enjoyed